where to go.
But here, real quick, this is the tough thing about this discussion, right?
Yeah.
About framing like this is we tend to want to go back to what's going on now.
Yeah.
Like imagine that we're like you're like people are good, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, you get to educate them however you want, and you get to create the system, right?
Yeah.
So like try to go from
the way I would do it
yeah.
is I personally believe the way to shift it so that you could have these conversations eventually. Mm-hmm. The first place to start is you have to hit the 20 to 32 age group. Mm-hmm. They're thinking about marriage. They're out of home, mm-hmm. usually starting their careers. They're in a place now where they're starting to expand and want to learn, want to succeed. They're hungry for information. As you get older, you're in more denial. Mm-hmm. And so they're more pliable and open to it. So for me, it would take 2 to 3 generations of focusing on the 20 to 32-year-old crowd.
Totally.
They need to be educated. All advertising, everything about all of this stuff goes to that group so that they start to realize the things in my book of, wow, this is exactly how it works. Well, the process that I want to create that you're talking about is probably a 5 to 8 generation process.
Yeah.
Because of how neural pathways, the brain, all this stuff works. So you start in there. Now as they have kids and stuff, now they've been, if they start in their early 20s, 10, 15 years of working on this cycle that I talk about, now they're imparting those skills into their kids. And the type of the parenting that I believe every parent should read is a book by Dr. Foster Cline, Parenting with Love and Logic. That's the model. You want to empower a kid, you want to create a healthy child, it's been created. It just, it's a wildly successful book, translated in 60 countries or something like that, but there's still a lack of information about it. So that would be the piece I would look at is that age group needs, as far as learning how to be a parent, that's the book. As far as learning how to be self-aware and deal with their own issues so they can use the tools in the book, that's mine, and others that I suggest in my book. I'm very big on, you can't just do this with my book. You need Byron Katie, you need Pia Melody, you need these other, all these pieces. Right. That would be the conglomerate, the information that I've compiled from them, and that would be how you start to shift it. Then the neural pathway shift, then the comfort system in our brain and what it seeks starts to shift. Now there's an openness to walk in for a first, second grader to start discussing how they feel. And to me, that's the model. But it would take probably 2 to 3 generations for it to sink in that this is the way we do it.
I think that's a very important point there, which if you do plan on building a new society of some kind, you do have to understand that it's the first people that go into it are going to be from this one. So they have to work through. They're probably not going to do it right. They got to focus so hard on making that next generation. Like it's all got to be focused around how that next generation comes out, and then helping them to make sure they do it again. So then it will take a couple generations for them to get into like some good habits and get through all of our bullshit that we've been programmed into for, like we've been
centuries.
For centuries.
This is the model that's been going on for centuries.
And no one's been aware of it because it's just, we've only recently started to study a lot of stuff.
In the 1600s, there was a fight between Descartes and the church. Descartes wanted to get into emotions. The church said, that's how we have our parishioners. You stay away from emotions. It wasn't until the early 1900s, Freud and everything, where the whole emotional personal development started, and then it was really the 70s. The flower, the aftermath of the flower child and the 60s movement, that's when all of a sudden it started to create some acceptance. So think about it. We just discovered that the Earth's not flat.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's where we are in this. And so it's taken 100 years to get to this point. Mm-hmm. So even my estimate of 5 to 8 generations is probably short-sighted. It may take 5 generations just to buy into Dr. Foster Cline, lifestyle, Byron Katie, Pia Melody, all that stuff. It might take that long before you have that. So I know this. I'll see a lot of change in my lifetime, but I'll never see the culmination. It's too long of a process.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to play the long game. You can't play it like you know what's going on.
It takes too long for the brain to acclimate.
Yeah.
I know me. It's taken me 13 years to discover. I mean, over a 10-year period, I spent about 7 years full time with a counselor, working my ass off.
Uh-huh.
You know, and so it was really about. I mean, I started researching and looking at all this stuff in my 20s, but really kind of hardcore the last 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
It took me 13 years to rip myself apart and find it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and for a lot of, I was hungry.
Yeah, and for those who aren't or are too afraid to go into that,
Exactly,
it'll probably take longer.
So it depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, could somebody get there quicker when they haven't self-inflicted so much? And I want to make this clear: we all self-inflict.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think you don't. That would be denial.
I definitely know I do.
Yeah, we all do. All of the troubles in your life, you set them up.
Oh, totally.
I don't care what it is. You've been raped, whatever it is. When you learn how this process works, you realize, oh my God, I did set it up.
Yeah.
So that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is. And for people listening, that, again, be careful with getting outraged about that, because he's not saying it's their fault.
No.
That they got raped.
No.
He's saying it's kind of like the law of attraction, where you tend to, what you think about, you draw in. And it's a weird phenomenon. If you really start to pay attention to it, you'll see it. Yeah. If you're constantly worried and constantly scared of things, those things will end up to start happening in your life. And if you switch it, you'll start drawing in other circumstances. Like this is really simple and like going the complete other way. But like, I've never broken the screen of my phone, and I don't wear a case. And people look at me and they go, what are you doing? You're crazy. Why don't you a case in your phone? And I just go, I don't break my phone. I drop it regularly, but I just like created this belief that my phone screen doesn't break. And so it doesn't. It's an interesting little phenomenon, which, might not be anything there, but it's belief.
I do want to clear that up. I don't condone it.
Of course not.
I don't condone the rape, and I'm not blaming you. Mm-hmm. What I am saying is, when you work through this process, you will see that because of something you went through younger, you made choices all along the way that put you in a position to choose this person, be in this club, be wherever it was, that led you. And that's what you're responsible for. It's not okay that it happened, but what you will see, and the reason you ended up there is you wanted power over what happened to you previously. It's counterintuitive. Everyone going, until you've worked this process, you're like, he's freaking crazy. Right. But in every situation, I mean, people.
It gives you that control you're looking for when you're able to realize it was me. Then you're able to free yourself of all that turmoil and probably a lot of the emotions that are connected around that happening to you. You'll be able to be like, oh, like watch me able to go through some of this Byron Katie stuff, read Kenny's book. Yeah. It'll click and you'll be like, oh, and then you'll feel free of it.
Yeah.
You'll feel
it's calm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what happened to me when I realized I adore my first wife. I know this. I never liked her, even before we got married. I didn't know how to say no. Mm-hmm. She said we should, and I was like, I guess I have to. I literally. And when I realized it was a very destructive, she was physically abusive, verbally abusive. I gave up my hockey career for her. I went 10 years without seeing anyone in my family. Over a 10-year relationship, we had 12 instances of intimacy, so that would include physical touch, kind words, or any sort of sexual activity. The last instance of intimacy in the relationship was 2.5 years before we got divorced. We were heading out to dinner, stand by the front door, and she goes, your butt looks good in those jeans. That was the only instance of kind words, physical touch, or sexual activity in the last 2.5 years. Wow. And she was also physically and verbally abusive. When I figured out how all this worked, what I realized, I don't have time. I want to eat up all your time with it. Yeah. But she saved my life. I never wanted to play hockey she gave me a choice. I could play the victim and blame her. I was in my 20s playing pro hockey, still living with my parents. I was the emotional support for both of them. I picked a woman. When I quit, my family's going, she's crazy. What are you doing? She says, them or me. I picked her. She gave me a way out of my parents' house. Again, I could play the victim and blame her. Because of finding my mom passed out on the toilet, now that I was sober, I couldn't have sex. It freaked me out. So I picked someone who was incapable. Again, I could blame her for it.
Right.
And why did I pick someone who's physically and verbally abusive? Because now I realize subconsciously I knew how absolutely manipulative I was being. I needed someone who would not only tell me what a piece of shit I was, she'd make me feel it. Where did that woman fail me? She adored me and loved me perfectly based on the brokenness I was in at the moment. Like, I literally have pure joy. I would never be with her. I could never get back because that's not because I'm in a different place. I no longer loathe myself that way. Would no longer want that in my life. But that woman adored me perfectly. And that's what you see.
Right.
Is where did she fail me? I got out of everything and I got to blame her. Yeah. Like she sat, like talk about Jesus on the cross. She put herself on the cross for my dysfunction.
Yeah.
And even
exactly
hit me.
You wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. Like and that's the freedom you get. And that's what, when I talk about rape or all these things, and you go, oh my God, you'll realize just like me, oh my God, that person set me free. I just didn't know how to find the freedom. Yeah. And that's the process I teach. It shows you there's a pathway to do it. Yeah. And I've heard people wake up and say they've been there. But I think what separates me is I was always writing down. And so now there's this map, which I haven't seen before.
That's important. Yeah. So we have kind of this plan. We're going to take some of these ideas that we've been talking about, build this education system. Start with people when they're roughly in their 20s, work it out. I mean, it's going to take a while. What are some of the ways that we can make sure it stays consistent, stays up to date, especially over the course of a couple of generations, right? Like, it's got to consistently be like working to improve itself.
Someone else will come along like me.
Yeah,
we've had Tony Robbins, all these people who had great life experiences, and they've added to it. And I readily admit in my book I've stolen from all of them. Mm-hmm. We all do. But I also found some pieces they haven't. Like Brene Brown's wonderful on shame, but the pieces I add to shame, she's never talked about. And they're key. And someone will come and add on to mine and everyone else's. It's a natural, it just happens. Because of the imperfection of the world, someone else will struggle. And so that part I'm not worried about. The growth of it, science will improve too. We'll have a better understanding of how the brain and body works and emotions. What will change it is as we work on this stuff, just like with me, your neural pathways shift. And so it's like I talk about, there's no such thing as the fear of failure. It's not humanly possible. Everyone talks about it. I did too. But we choose failure all day, every day. We're not afraid of it. We've all laid in bed and gone, oh man, if I go do this, my life, my relationship, my career, whatever will get better. And we choose not to. So I don't feel like it. Well, you just chose failure. You're not afraid of it. What you're afraid of, what that feeling is the fear of success. So as we learn these tools, we will start choosing that more. Now the neural pathway, the conditioned response in the human dynamic is to choose failure and self-sabotage and self-victimization. As we conquer these things in my book and everyone else's books, the neural pathway, because DNA, all DNA is emotion that gets fired repeatedly. That's it. So what I'm showing people is how to change those emotional patterns so that you fire different chemicals, which will change DNA. That's how it gets passed down to the generation before, or the next generation. Right. Is as we learn to fire these new neural pathways and new emotions, we will create new DNA that no longer, over time, needs that.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty big. Have you heard the monkey experiment? Yeah. Right? That's a good experiment.
Yeah. Go ahead, tell it though. It's a great story because a lot of people have it.
Yeah, for people who don't know it. Some scientists put a bunch of monkeys in a room and they put the ladder in the center, and